Thank you for joining us for another episode of Marking the Times. A lot more people I know are kind of interested in prophecy in these days with all that's happening in our world. Still a lot of reverberations over in the Middle East, and certainly with this coronavirus that's been ravaging the world. So a lot of people are wondering, where the world's headed at this time. And we've kind of given some prophetic updates the last few weeks, but I want to answer a question this week that was sent in by someone. I probably get more questions about the rapture really than any other issue. And as you can imagine, the rapture we believe is the next event on God's prophetic calendar. And there are a lot of questions about who's going to be involved in it, the timing of it in relation to the tribulation period. A lot of questions about the rapture. This is one I've kind of answered it, I think, in a kind of an ancillary way before, but not directly. So let me read the question and give an answer to this. It says, here's a question for you that was posed to me by someone that doesn't believe in the rapture. Does Hebrews 9:27 form a scriptural foundation that there's not a rapture? And I'll just mention, Hebrews 9:27 is the verse that says, it's appointed unto man once to die, and after that comes the judgment. So some would use that to say, well, hey, there's not going to be a rapture because everybody has to die. So he says, how should a rapture-believing Christian properly discern that verse? And that's a good question because, again, in Hebrews 9:27, it says it's appointed a man once to die. After that is going to come the judgment. So the idea is there can't be a rapture of living believers to heaven without dying because everybody has to die. Well, a couple things about that are important. One is, remember in the Old Testament, there were two people in the Old Testament who went to heaven without dying. We have Enoch back in Genesis chapter 5, and then we have Elijah later who's caught up to heaven. Now, some would say, well, I think those are the two witnesses who are going to come back in the tribulation period, Revelation 11, and then they're going to die, because it's appointed the man once to die. I don't think Enoch and Elijah are the two witnesses. I think it's probably Elijah and Moses. But there are some people, obviously, who will never die. I think Enoch is certainly one of those. But there's also people who've died more than once. You think about that. Lazarus was raised from the dead. We have several people in the Old Testament who were brought back to life and died again. So when it says it's appointed the man once to die, obviously there are exceptions in that Enoch never died, and there are people who died more than once. I think when we look at Hebrews 9:27, we have to look at that as a general statement. It's appointed the man once to die, and after that comes the judgment. And certainly that's been true throughout history for 99 point however many nines you want to put after that. The only exceptions would be Enoch, who was raised to never die again, and some who've died twice. But the Bible seems to tell us there'll be a whole generation of people who will do an end run on the grave, who won't taste physical death. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 51, Paul says, behold, I tell you a mystery. In other words, this is something not revealed previously. We will not all sleep. And again, the word sleep there is a euphemism for death, for physical death. So he says, not everybody's going to die. We'll all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For this perishable must put on the imperishable, this mortal must put on immortality. So what he's saying here is, look, there's going to be a whole generation of people who will not sleep, they won't die. But they're going to have to be changed because we have to get a new body to dwell in heaven. So this perishable will put on the imperishable, this mortal will put on immortality. We see the same thing in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, where it says there that the dead in Christ will rise first, then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So those who've died as believers, their bodies will be resurrected. Those of us who are alive on the earth will be raptured. Again, we'll receive that incorruptible, imperishable, immortal body in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. So that's how I think we reconcile the idea of a rapture of living believers to heaven who'll never die with Hebrews 9:27 that says it's appointed to man once to die. Again, there's a lot of exceptions to that passage, and the rapture generation will be a great exception, a massive exception to that. And just think what it'll be like in heaven if we're part of that rapture generation. We'll be a group of people, a whole generation of people who never tasted physical death, yet who will be there in heaven. And to be able to escape that would be a tremendous blessing. And so we need to look for and long for the rapture and the coming of Jesus Christ every day. Again, I think it's the next event on God's prophetic calendar. And with all that's happening in our world today, we certainly should live with the hope every moment that Jesus could come back again to take us to be with himself. I hope that answers that question well for you, and you'll understand that a little bit better about how that fits in with the rapture. Again, thanks for joining us for this episode of Marking the Times. God bless you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.